one of my favorite writers, and you know, really glad to have her here. You may know her as J.T. Leroy. I only know her as Laura Albert. Come on, let's hear her for Laura. Okay, so thanks for coming out, and I know we have a motley crew here. What I want to talk about is, you know, why I kind of assembled these characters with me is, first of all, they're both really smart. They both come out of hardcore. They both come out of different angles of it, and I think they could all kind of like give some levity to an often not very levity subject. So I'm just going to throw some questions out, and you know, you just kind of take it where you want to. What attracted you to hardcore, first of all? Because it was way much more than music. It wasn't just about the music. It was a culture in itself.
I think for me, one of the things that you kind of touched on was you showed some of the bands that we were reacting against in society that we were reacting against. I mean, the Pistols and the Clash and the Ramones, they saw the sort of bloated monstrosity that a lot of rock and roll bands have become. You know, and even bands that I'll still listen to now and classic rock, and you know, driving around or whatever, that's cool. But what did you want to become that? No, you wanted to not be. That was you know, like the Led Zeppelin at the end kind of thing. That was what you didn't want to become. You know, the whole certainly the hair metal. You know, that was another thing. So I think a lot of it was, for me, I saw a lot of stuff in high school and, you know, getting in fights with the jocks and just like, I just didn't want to become what that world was, a bloated sort of, you know, caricature of what rock and roll was to me. To me, rock and roll really was the Who and the early Stones. They were rebels, they were tough, they were fucking cool, you know, and the Who is still to me one of my favorite punk rock bands. Their music was original, but beautiful. Their lyrics were poignant and touching and about trying to find yourself. And so, like Quadrophenia, the movie and the album changed my entire universe, you know, when that came out. But you know, there were so many bands that were doing stuff that I thought was a distortion of what rock and roll was, and the lifestyle was a distortion of a life that I wanted to lead. That I just knew I had to find something different, and I still remember, you know, just finding those early bands was such a great experience, and you know, it can happen any time. You know, you can be 85 or you can be 15. It doesn't matter. When you hear something new and it hits you for the first time, it's really a joyous experience. And for me, you know, when I first heard the first Clash stuff, I was like, you know, bells went off, the sirens started ringing, you know, and the first Dead Kennedy stuff as well was also, you know, people don't really, I think, appreciate how important the Dead Kennedys were to hardcore and to punk rock. So those two bands for me were pretty pivotal.
No, louder.
As you're a young boy, I'll be loud.
Okay. You know, it was like, again, it's exactly what he said. It's hearing people singing like Led Zeppelin, ooh, baby, and about this stuff where I couldn't relate. And then I heard stiff little fingers saying, you know, there ain't no street.com to make you feel so all alone. Plenty of folks telling what to do, but they don't speak the same language as you. Right? And that was it. I was done. That was it. They were talking about what I experienced, the phenomenal sense of aloneness. And the hope that maybe we're not isolated, that we can come together and do something. The politics of what I saw around and the pain of suffering in homes that were dysfunctional and my friends' families that were dysfunctional, I wasn't relating to Led Zeppelin and Baby, I loving you, I wanting to get in your booty. No, that wasn't it.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of you know, you would kind of realize you kind of found a subculture, like you found a new language. I think was a common feeling, kind of like an umbrella group of various types of misfits kids.
I mean, I really think, honestly, and it's probably not politically correct to say that I think punk for hardcore especially, was in some ways, at least for me and some of my friends, we felt like a gang, you know, and not in a gang like we're going to go out and try and do crimes, you know, like in Repo Man, let's go do some crimes, you know, but it was more like, you know, we had a brotherhood and a bond and a sisterhood with the girls who were part of it, and there was something there was a family, and I totally, you know, I absolutely understand the gang mentality now, and why people do gangs and why kids do gangs, especially because you're all alone and you think the world is against you and you hate the world, and then all of a sudden there's somebody there to have your back and to speak to you, and you can see the world a little differently, and you get a confidence, you know. And so for me, like all those guys that you just showed, well, certainly like the LA guys, some of them were actual gangs, you know. And he's absolutely right about Jack Grisham. Jack, I love you. I'm so glad you're my friend. If you see this on film later, you know, Jack is a mean, tough motherfucker, and still to this day, he's the sweetest guy in the world. You definitely don't want to get on the bad side of Jack Grisham. So, in fact, all those TSOL guys, they were all like 20 feet tall, and they would be like, yeah, man, let's go get in some fights. You know, it was just unbelievable, you know. But to me, like the joy of it was more than just the music. Like you said, it was a lifestyle and a brotherhood and sisterhood and just this kind of bonding. It was my family. You know, it became my family very quickly, and that's a special thing. And these guys, I would still take a bullet for all the guys in the Boston hardcore scene, and all the guys in the Dag Nasty, and you know, they're my brothers still, right? You know?
And you very much found yourself within this subculture kind of too, right? So like you really immersed yourself.
I still have my letters from Jimmy Gestapo offering to bust me out when I was institutionalized, you know what I mean? You know, I saw Harley when he had first come back from Ireland, and he was a skinhead, and, you know, the stimulators had gone, and I was just like, I just saw Quadrophenia, and I'm walking around the corner with my friend Lee Smith, who'd gotten me into punk, and there's Harley, and he's a fucking skinhead, and no one had ever seen him do that. It just wasn't, and he's like, he had a kind of little British accent going on, and he's like, this is what it is. And we just were like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden, everyone was a skinhead, but it wasn't the Brit skinhead. It became like the New York skate or hustler skinhead. And the New York scene was like, I love in the book how it's broken down the differences between the scenes, because I never really thought about it so much. Like, the Washington kids and even the Boston kids, those were privileged kids. The hardcore scene, Avenue A, everyone's a street kid, you know? And these are kids that there was no place to go. That was it. What you had, Covenant House, you know, squats. That was it. It was a very different type. And the wars and the battles that would go on. And it was exactly what you said. It was a family. It was a tribe. It totally was. In New York, more so because it was survival. It was absolutely about life and death. There was no home to go to.
Yeah, I think it's really easy now to sit back and like listen to like one of these records and say, yo, this is good or bad. But you tried being Harley Flanagan playing bass with like a Wonder Bread clasp as your bass, you know, your bass pick or something. You know, these guys were living hard, you know, and it's kind of unfathomable, and it's really kind of brave, you know, and these guys really made it easy for everything that goes on today downtown. They really were like the bulldozers who paved the way for, you know, for a lot of the stuff that could happen.
I just remember, this is, you know, for those of you who've ever gone through this, in like 1981 on Comm Ave in Boston, waiting for the T, and just the cars would drive by, and fuck you, meow, faggot, meow, you suck, meow, Devo, meow, you know, and you know, every once in a while something go flying out of the car at you, and you know, and then like the guys getting out of Fenway after the games got out, and we used to congregate, all 20 of us in the Boston crew would congregate in Kenmore Square, which is pretty close to Fenway Park, and we thought we were kind of, you know, at the time we were pretty tough, and we didn't take a lot of grief from anybody. Well, when 500 jocks get out of Fenway Park with, you know, this size beers, like 5 of those in their bellies, and they bought the souvenir baseball bats, we were going to lose most of those times. And we learned how to run really fast with combat boots, and we learned how to fight. And you know, nowadays you could look like that and it'd be like you'd fit right in Hot Topic in the suburban mall, you know. But so those guys and all of us, you know, at that time, I'm not trying to draw glory to it. I'm just saying it was definitely a lot tougher than to look like we looked.
Yeah, and just to point out before I forget is many of you who missed DYS those first years can see them first New York show since 1985.
Yeah, since 85.
With the Antidote at Webster Hall, January 2nd. So there you go. So sorry about that. I just doing the mandatory plug. It was also
$20 later, Steve.
The other part, and similar to this, was there was an ethical code to this. You know, it wasn't just like we're in a rock band or we're in a rock scene. It was like, you know, do it yourself, be unafraid of failure. You know, don't do things for the money. You know, do it because it feels right. You know, these were very radical terms for regular kids growing up in America. I mean, do you talk about the ethics? Because there were ethics that you in other words, there's the ethics you get from your family, and there's the ethics you get from like the hardcore scene.
Well, everyone had each other's back. I mean, we just had each other's back. But there was also the idea that this was new territory, so there wasn't. No one said you can't do this. I mean, the world said we can't, but they didn't know to tell us that you can't because they didn't know we were there. And so the idea of creating a new club, the idea of just whatever age you were. I mean, I was 14 and I had loud, fast retail mail order. Nobody told me I couldn't do it. Only one person busted me for how old I was. You could do what you want, and it was just, it was that gang kind of thing. I remember, like, Jimmy Gestapo, no, you need me, you tell me. You know, and he would tell me, and Ross Cavity creeps in that fucking fight. You know, yeah, smashed this guy, you know, the bottle and everything, and we ran. It was fucking great. It was what it was. And it gave you a sense of, it was like that movie Warriors, you know, you had everyone Warriors come out and play, yay, at CBGBs, that's what everybody was out there playing at being a hero and making your own map for it. It was just phenomenal. From most people coming from a family where they were told they were pieces of shit and they could never do anything. The only problem was what straight edge really saved it, because it was the drugs that was just like the hippie scene, like what everyone hated, the hippies, it was becoming that.
Dave, you were in Boston where there was a real kind of moral, ethical overtone to its punk rock, you know, kind of unseen, you know, with SSD and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's sort of like when you look back on anything from 25 plus years ago, and there's some things you probably would do differently, you know. And I certainly, you know, it was a fairly violent scene. It wasn't all about the violence, and there was a certain ethical code. I think the ethics was to do it yourself. There was no roadmap, and there was nobody had done this stuff. At least we didn't know if they had. Maybe there were some, you know, people from the '60s who had done entirely similar things in their own genre, you know. But there were no major label going to touch you. You know, I remember like driving down to New York to pick up the first pressing of the first DYS record, and we printed 1,000 of them, and now they sell for like hundreds of dollars on eBay, you know, and we just called them and said, you know, we scraped up money, and we literally, I took money that my parents sent me for lunch